Kara Shalom, welcome to our watercolor journey. Heinrich used a lot of dry brushing in this painting. He also used some rather interesting color mixes for this one. The materials used are listed in the description below. On the palette we have a variety of premixes using French Ultramarine, Rose Madder, Raw Sienna and Burnt Umber. Heinrich varied the amounts of pigment he added to each mix to create the different colors. So from the top we have a mixture of French Ultramarine with a touch of Rose Madder. Then we have French Ultramarine, Rose Madder and a bit of Raw Sienna. Up next is French Ultramarine and Burnt Umber. Then French Ultramarine with a bit more Rose Madder and Raw Sienna. And then we have Raw Umber, French Ultramarine and Burnt Umber. Color alternatives are listed below. The artist paper is taped to a flat board and Heinrich uses the Rosemary and Company Squirrel number 10 round to wet the paper randomly. He wants plenty of dry patches for the clouds, so he leaves some areas of the paper untouched. There are three premixes on the palette here, French Ultramarine and Rose Madder, because the Rose Madder warms the blue a little bit. The next color has very little Rose Madder and a tiny bit of Raw Sienna added to the French Ultramarine. And then the darker gray has Burnt Umber added to the French Ultramarine. He uses the different mixes to bring variation in the sky and to create the darker shadows of the clouds. Allow the painting to dry. Now he has more pigments added to the palette. He will start with a purple mix of French Ultramarine, Rose Madder and Raw Sienna. This is added with the Rosemary and Co. No. 5 round to form the mountains in the distance. He uses the same colors as in the sky, but the bit more Rose Madder has now warmed up the blue a lot more, so the mountains will stand out against the cooler sky. The dry background also gives the mountains a hard edge, so they are more visible. He uses some of the other colors on the palette to add a bit of variation to the mountain range. If it is just a flat purple color, it would be rather uninteresting. A shade of yellow will complement the purple of the mountains, so he adds a bit of raw sienna to the landscape directly in front of the mountains. He adds the other colors from the palette onto the dry paper and allows it to diffuse into each other as he goes. He leaves plenty of white spaces in the foreground. You can always paint over these, but it is quite difficult to get your light back once you have covered the entire paper. The pigment is not too wet, and he uses quick, loose brush strokes to achieve the dry brush effect. To add more detail, he uses the Princeton Aqua Elite No. 1 rigger. He starts by adding a shadow line to the base of the mountains. Here he adds the tree. Note that the trunk is not just brown. He uses all the colors on the palette to fill in the trunk. This will help to make the tree look more natural. He also adds a few spindly trees in the background. They are far away, so there isn't much detail there. He enhances the shape of the terrain by adding shadows and some clumps of grass. The shadow of the tree helps to ground it so that it doesn't look like it's floating in thin air. This is a very easy, quick landscape that will give you some practice in color mixing. We hope you enjoy doing this one. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope to see you soon. Vaya con Dios.